My grandmother Eleanor is 93 years old. She sits in her rocking chair by the window every evening, her gnarled fingers wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea that's long gone cold. Most days she doesn't say much, but last Tuesday, when the autumn wind began howling through the trees outside her nursing home, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, her milky eyes suddenly sharp and focused. "Before I forget, before it's too late." What she told me over the next few hours made my blood run cold. These aren't the sweet childhood memories you'd expect from a grandmother. These are the stories she's kept buried for 75 years, stories from her time at Blackwood Elementary School, a building that was demolished in 1967 after what the newspapers called structural concerns. But Grandma Eleanor knows the truth, and now so do I. "It wasn't the structure they were worried about," she said, her voice cracking like old parchment. "It was what lived in the structure." Grandma Eleanor, then just young Ellie Thompson, was 8 years old in the fall of 1940 when she started 3rd grade at Blackwood Elementary. The school was a 3-story brick monstrosity that loomed over the small town of Millbrook Falls like a tombstone. It had been built in 1885, and even then people said the land was cursed. "The school was built on top of an old cemetery," Grandma explained, her fingers trembling as she set down her teacup. "They moved most of the bodies, but not all. My teacher, Miss Hartwell, told us that some graves were too old to find, too deep." Miss Catherine Hartwell was 24 years old, fresh out of teacher's college, with auburn hair she wore in tight victory rolls and a smile that could light up the darkest classroom. She became Ellie's favorite teacher, and later the first person to believe her. Then there was Samuel Price, the school janitor, a skeletal man in his 60s who walked with a pronounced limp and never, ever smiled. The children feared him, not because he was cruel, but because of the way he would stop in the middle of mopping the floor and stare at empty corners of rooms, his lips moving in silent conversation with things no one else could see. "Samuel knew," Grandma said. "He knew everything that happened in that school. He tried to warn us." Ellie's best friend was Dorothy Chin, the daughter of the town's only Chinese grocer. Dorothy was brave where Ellie was cautious, loud where Ellie was quiet. The two girls were inseparable, sharing secrets, trading lunch items, and walking home together every day down Maple Street. The final key player was Principal Augustus Blackwood, yes, the school's namesake, and the grandson of its founder. He was a massive man with a white beard and cold, calculating eyes. He ruled the school with an iron fist, and his office on the 3rd floor was a place children went to cry. "Principal Blackwood knew too," Grandma whispered, "but unlike Samuel, he didn't care. I think he liked what was happening." The school itself was a character in these stories. 3 floors of endless hallways that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. 42 classrooms, most of which hadn't been used in decades. A basement that flooded every spring with dark water that smelled like rotting flowers. And an attic, always locked, always forbidden, where strange sounds could be heard during quiet moments. "We should have burned it down," Grandma said, her eyes distant. "We should have burned it all down in 1940. But they didn't, and what happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. It started in October, just after Halloween. Ellie and Dorothy were staying after school to clean the blackboard erasers, a punishment for talking during arithmetic. Miss Hartwell had left them alone in the classroom while she attended a faculty meeting. The classroom felt different when empty. The walls seemed taller, the shadows deeper. The old radiator hissed and clanked in the corner, making sounds that almost resembled whispered words. Outside, the October wind stripped the last brown leaves from the maple trees, sending them spiraling past the glass like desperate hands grasping at the glass. The sun was setting, Grandma remembered, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. That's when Dorothy saw her. Through the third-floor window, in the building across the courtyard, a wing that had been condemned and locked for 5 years, stood a little girl. She wore a white dress covered in dark stains that looked disturbingly like handprints, as if many children had grabbed at her, pulled at her, tried to hold her back from something. Her black hair hung limply around a face too pale to be living, too still to be breathing. Her eyes were hollow pits of darkness that somehow still managed to see, to watch, to hunger, and she was staring directly at Dorothy and Ellie. The temperature in the classroom dropped so suddenly that both girls could see their breath misting in the air. The radiator stopped its hissing. The wind outside fell silent. In that terrible quiet, they could hear something, a faint tapping, like nail files on glass, coming from across the courtyard. Dorothy waved, Grandma shuddered. God help us, she waved. The girl in the window waved back. Then she pressed her hands against the glass, and her mouth opened impossibly wide, as if screaming, but no sound came through. Ellie grabbed Dorothy's arm. "We need to tell someone." They ran to find Miss Hartwell, but by the time they returned with their teacher, the window was empty. Miss Hartwell checked the records. There was no way into that wing. The doors had been welded shut. That night, Dorothy Chen didn't come home from school. Her parents called the police. Search parties combed the woods. They dredged the river. But Dorothy Chen had vanished completely, last seen walking down Maple Street with Ellie Thompson at 4:15 p.m. Except that wasn't quite true. "I saw her again," Grandma said, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I saw Dorothy in the window of the condemned wing. She was standing next to the girl in white, both of them pressing their hands against a glass, both of them screaming silently." Ellie told her parents. She told the police. She told Miss Hartwell. No one believed her. "Children have vivid imaginations," they said. "She's traumatized by losing her friend," they said. But Samuel, the janitor, believed her. He found Ellie in the hallway, tears streaming down her face, and he knelt down despite his bad leg. "I see them too," he whispered. 47 children in that wing, all taken, all trapped. Story 2, The Basement Door. 2 weeks after Dorothy disappeared, the basement flooded again. But it wasn't spring, it was November, and it hadn't rained in days. The water appeared overnight, seeping up through the ancient floor tiles, bringing with it a smell that made even the hardiest teachers gag. Rotting flowers mixed with something older, something that shouldn't exist in the world of the living. Principal Blackwood ordered Samuel to investigate. The old janitor descended into the darkness with only his flashlight and a prayer. What he found made him quit the next day, but not before he told Ellie everything. "The water was coming from the old coal cellar," Grandma explained, her fingers trembling as she set down her teacup. "Behind a door that was supposed to be sealed. The door was open." Samuel had walked through the ankle-deep water, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom like a knife through smoke. The water was unnaturally cold, so cold it made his legs ache within seconds, and it moved strangely, not flowing, but pulsing, as if it had a heartbeat. The coal cellar was vast, stretching far beyond where the school's foundation should have ended. The brick walls were slick with moisture and something else, something organic that looked like the growth you'd find in a deep cave untouched by sunlight for centuries. And covering every inch of those walls were names, hundreds of them, scratched into the brick with fingernails that must have bled with the effort. Dorothy Chin, 1940. Margaret Wilson, 1938. Thomas Bradford, 1935. Sarah Williams, 1932. The names went back decades, all the way to 1885, the year the school was built. But that wasn't the worst part. Beneath many names were messages, pleas carved in desperate, shaking letters. "Mother, I'm sorry. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Please, someone help us. The water is rising. He promised we could go home. The singing won't stop." And at the very back of the cellar, Grandma said, her voice shaking as her hands trembled as they clutched